Hey, everybody, and welcome to your weekly Wednesday webinar with Swibbler. Today, we're going to talk about Beyond the Anecdote, using stories and case studies to bring your business book to life. In this webinar, we're going to take a look at the difference between anecdotes, stories, and case studies. We'll take a look at when and how to use each type effectively. We'll look at some techniques for crafting compelling narratives, and we'll take a look at some common pitfalls that weaken business writing so you'll know what to avoid. We're excited to have you join us for this webinar on business writing. To engage your reader and develop credibility in business writing, you'll want to consider including things like case studies, anecdotes, and stories in your book. The problem with a lot of business books is that too many business books suffer from the same flaw. They're forgettable. So you're competing with a lot of things on the shelves already. And some of these problems are consistent across these books that don't sell well. And some of that is generic advice. People are writing about things that readers have read before, that they already know. Also, some of these writers will use abstract concepts that don't connect to real-world situations, which is where your anecdotes, your stories, and your case studies will come in. Some of these books also have thin anecdotes. They serve as decoration, but they don't really illustrate the point that the writer is trying to make. And a lot of these books fail to hit that emotional connection with their readers that help to make these ideas stick. There are at least three types of business narrative tools that we're going to take a look at today. And those are anecdotes, case studies, and stories. And these will help elevate your writing. With anecdotes, these are brief illustrative moments. They're usually about 1 to 3 paragraphs, and they're going to add flavor and provide quick examples for your readers to understand the concepts you're talking about. You'll want to use anecdotes when you want a quick, memorable illustration of a single point. You might use one to open or close a chapter with impact. Often these are a good way to start a discussion in your chapters. You can also use them to break up dense theoretical sections where maybe you're explaining too many figures and numbers or theoretical points. You also might use these where you have limited space, but you want concrete examples for your readers. So an example of an anecdote here, The Friction Project by Robert Sutton and Huggy Rao. This book draws on years of research and features case studies on companies like Uber, Netflix, and Boeing. And the book teaches readers how to become what they call friction fixers. There are shorter targeted examples in this book that illustrate specific points about organizational friction rather than complete business transformations. So you get these really neat spots of information in these short anecdotes and digestible points for your readers. Another great example is Good to Great by Jim Collins. This book provides insight and concrete steps through cases like Walgreens, Pharmacy, Kimberly-Clark, which is a pharmaceutical, drug, healthcare company, and Wells Fargo, which is a finance banking institution. And it talks about how organizational transformation can be accomplished in businesses. Collins uses these companies as recurring examples through the book to demonstrate his framework about what separates good companies from great ones. Another example of a narrative tool is case studies. These are in-depth examinations with analysis, and they're a little bit longer than your anecdotes. They can be anywhere from 3 to 10 pages. And these are usually used to prove your concepts. They provide detailed blueprints for the discussion you're having in a chapter. You'll want to use the case studies when your readers need detailed, replicable examples. These are more scientific examples. You want to use them when you want proof or evidence that the methodology that you're talking about in your book actually works. These also teach complex multi-step processes, so that's why you need more length to describe them. And also, when your audience sees that you include case studies with real resources, these lend credibility and depth to your business book as well. So we'll do an anatomy of case studies here. It's a story with analysis. So it often includes research, data, and analysis that can be fact-checked with multiple sources. If you need guidance conducting reliable research, we do have this available on the resources library on our Discord server for you. You'll just look up research in the Discord server resource library, and you'll find that we have a packet that has reliable sources for you to find and use as well. So, the anatomy of a case study also has a certain framework to it. You want to talk about the context and background, set the scene with the relevant industry you're discussing, the market and company details. Talk about the challenge that you're discussing in this chapter that you're writing that's going to fit around this central theme or point of the chapter. You'll define the chapter and clearly talk about the metrics and stakes for the business. Talk about the strategy or solution that the business used. This is the approach. And then think about the implementation and include that next. Show how this approach is going to be executed, including the obstacles that the business faced in implementing this approach. After that, you want to use your data and evidence to discuss the results that prove that this approach the business took works and whatever it is that you're working to fit into your book as well. After that, make it simple for your reader. Think about the key takeaways that they need to learn from this case study. What are the lessons that they can apply to their own business understanding? Some great examples here are in A.G. Lafley's book and Roger Martin's book, Playing to Win. It talks about the olive oil company and the transformation that this company used as a standout case study. In the late 1990s, the brand was struggling with oil of old lady, and it had sales under $800 million. The team repositioned the material that they were selling, the products they're selling, to target women that were 35 and older who were just beginning to see signs of aging. And this created a masstige category, a mass prestige, and developed products for fighting the 7 signs of aging. Um, this product was priced at around $18.99 in mass market stores. And so the case study that Lafley and Martin use in this book walks through the entire strategic framework that Olay tried to use in rebranding their product. They include specific numbers, decisions, and then the outcomes, and how the brand aimed for a market share leadership in North America and grew to over $1 billion in sales. A pro tip here for case studies is include direct quotes where you can from participants of the case study to add authenticity and emotional resonance. Remember, if you do cite from other sources, you should keep the citation and make sure your quotes are accurate. The third type of narrative business tool that you have are stories. And what these include is a complete narrative arc. It's like telling a short story related to a business idea in a 1 to 3 page kind of length. What you're trying to do with the stories is demonstrate transformation in a business and engage the reader's emotion. You want to use your stories when you're demonstrating transformation or change over time. The narrative story in business writing helps readers understand the stakes and consequences, and it shows the human side of business decisions. This strategy, this type of writing can create memorable anchors for your key concepts that you're discussing in your chapters. So a good story is going to include several parts. One is a person that readers care about. So it's not just a company, but a person with goals, fears, and stakes. Give them a name, a face, and a voice. One good resource, other than just the materials that we have for you in the Discord server, is looking at TED Talks. Oftentimes, you'll see CEOs, CFOs of companies that talk about challenges in their business. So this is something that gives you a face to a company as well that you can use as a resource. Another part of the anatomy of a good story is to make sure you have a clear problem or challenge. What went wrong and what was at risk here? Was the company in danger of failing? Was another company taking over the market? How was the challenge impacting the goals of the company overall? How was the challenge resolved? And make readers feel the tension here as well. The next part of your good stories is the journey. You want to apply the concept that you're discussing in your chapter, the theme of your chapter. You want to show the steps, including the mistakes and adjustments that the key players in the story you're telling had to make. And this is the moment where the teaching happens, where you're going to be showing how this story applies the theme you're covering in the chapter of your book. The next part is a meaningful resolution. What changed here, what was learned, and then connect it back to the larger point of the chapter itself. Keep that theme in mind. An example of a good story here, there are quite a few in Chris Gilbo's book, The $100 Startup. Gilbo identified about 1,000, 1,500 individuals who built businesses earning $50,000 or more from modest investments of about $100 or less. And then he focused on the 50 most intriguing case studies. So there are complete stories that show how much people spent at the start, how much they invested in their business, what they did in the first few weeks and months to generate cash for that business. It also takes a look at key mistakes that they made and then crucial insights that made their businesses work. There are some advanced storytelling tactics here that you can use as well. We'll talk about some of these. And some of these you would use in fiction storytelling as well. One thing you can do is start in the middle, in media res. By beginning in the middle of the action, you will backfill the context later. And this is going to create immediate engagement for your readers. So let's take a look at a weak example of how you would begin a story versus a strong one. The weak one here is Sarah Johnson founded her company in 2015 after graduating from business school. That's very dull. That's the way a lot of people start their careers in business. And it doesn't really pull your reader in. It sounds more like a newspaper article. Compare that with the stronger opening. Sarah stared at the $47 in her account. In 3 days, payroll was due for 12 employees. Now we have a conflict. Now we have something we want to find the resolution to. And it does pull your reader in to have this narrative. Another thing that you can include in your storytelling are sensory details. People tend to think of sensory details for things like fiction, short stories, even memoirs, but you can use these in business writing as well. Help readers see, hear, and feel the moment that you're describing in your stories or your anecdotes. This makes abstract business concepts concrete for your readers. You can actually use Scribbler's AI to do this as you're revising your work. Use the describe function in the AI tasks, and then select the sensory form that you want to use, sight, smell, hearing, and so forth to revise. Another strategy you can use is to include that messy middle part. Don't skip from the problem to the solution. That makes it seem like there's something magical and that everything ends clearly and neatly when we have problems in the fields of business. It doesn't work that way, as most of you know that are watching this know. You want to show the trial and error, the doubts, the pivots, the restless nights awake, wondering if you're going to be able to meet payroll and so forth. Another good strategy is to create callbacks. You want to reference your earlier stories. If you start with an anecdote in the book, or you start with a story in the book, you can refer to it again in later chapters to create cohesion throughout the entire book and then reinforce learning on the concepts that you're trying to teach. Where do you find these stories? There are several ways. If you have clients, you can talk about their successes, but use their permission. Please don't write about people without their permission, unless it's something that is in the public domain. You can talk about your own failures and lessons. That's always useful. People like to read from experiences from people in the first person. You can also talk about observations from your own career. Another great strategy to find stories is to interview people. Look for practitioners in the same field. You can reach out by email, by phone, at conferences. Talk to people who have used the same methods that you've used. And look at subject matter experts. You can contact those via email if you cannot reach people in person. Another place to find stories is by conducting research. Again, we have help for you with research in our resource library. You can look at academic journals. You can look at industry publications like Forbes, Business Weekly. Look at business history books. Public sources are also very helpful. Company blogs and reports, earnings calls, presentations, and documented case studies are all valuable sources for information as well. One important thing to note is that you do want to verify facts and get permission where needed for what you're going to include. So some strategic places to include your stories. One is to use the opening hook, which is something that we use in fiction as well. Start each chapter with a story that illustrates a problem or concept. This is going to pull your readers in immediately And then you can show how what you are teaching is going to be tied into that anecdote, story, or case study. You might also think about the teaching sandwich, where you talk about a story that's related to your concept, then you introduce the concept and framework, and then have a story that applies the concept and framework in the last section. This is going to create a complete learning loop where you have story, difficult concept or framework, and application. Another thing that you can do is the contrast method. This is where you can show two stories side by side. One where your principle that you're talking about or the theory that you're talking about was applied, and then the other one where it was not. The contrast is going to make your point very powerfully. Another thing that you can attempt throughout your book is the thread. You might follow one extended case study, such as the example in the Olay book, where you follow a case study across multiple chapters, showing different aspects or stages. And this creates narrative momentum. So there are ways that you can use Scribbler's AI to develop these narrative tools as well. For the anecdotes, you may want to use first person perspective. The tone here can be whatever your tone of your writing tone is. If it's your story, it could be humorous, serious, sarcastic, and so forth. If it's an anecdote from a friend in the business world or someone you know, you can replicate their tone. For case studies, you will probably want to use third person and use an objective tone. You're trying to keep this as a research type part of the writing. And then with the stories, interactive narrative perspective is very useful. It's more conversational. It will engage your readers. And you can, of course, use any tone you want with an interactive point of view. So some things to avoid. We call these the 7 deadly sins of business storytelling. So these are some common mistakes to avoid in your business writing. You want to avoid the humble brag. Try to avoid disguising self-promotion as a teaching story about yourself. Another thing to avoid is the name drop, just mentioning famous people and companies without substance. If you're mentioning these people and companies, it should relate to what you're discussing in that chapter, and it should prove some kind of point related to the theme you're developing. Another thing to avoid is the urban legend. Using something unverified, like everyone knows, is going to have your reader questioning the credibility of what you're offering them. Another thing that's very important, business books should be readable. They should be engaging. You shouldn't do something that's called the data dump. You want to avoid overwhelming readers with statistics and try to include some narrative in it. Yes, you do want to include resources that include facts, information, but try to make it engaging by including the stories surrounding that data. Avoid also something called the missing link. You don't want to avoid connecting your story back to your concept. Having an engaging story is great. It should always tie back into the theme of that chapter. This is a big one as well, and we avoid this in fiction for the same reason. You don't want to have the perfect hero. If there are no mistakes, no struggle, no authenticity in the business models or the stories that you're offering, it's very difficult for your reader to connect to it. So let us see the flaws, the mistakes, the failures. That's part of learning as well. And then this is the seventh one is where you edit mercilessly. You want to avoid pointless details. You want to exclude irrelevant information. Make sure you don't have things there that are slowing down the narrative. So there's something else to consider with your credibility. Not all stories hold the same weight when it comes to credibility. So you'll want to choose what you're going to include based on your needs. There are higher levels of credibility and moderate levels and lower. The highest credibility is going to be your own client work or something that can be replicated, but you get permission, of course. Original research and interviews is very credible, especially if it's peer-reviewed in a journal or a newspaper article. And documented case studies from reputable sources. These are all highly credible. Moderate credibility are well-known public examples with verification. Things we know about large companies like Walgreens, Fisher-Price, and so forth. Academic research with clear citations is also credible, and news stories from credible outlets can lend moderate credibility to your writing as well. Your lower credibility are going to be secondhand stories. This doesn't mean you can't include it. It just means these are not as powerful in all cases as including data and research as well. Try to avoid overused examples where everyone cites the same companies to prove a point. If you've read a book that includes an example, or you've read several books that include the same example, I would recommend avoiding that same example. You want to avoid including stories without sources and use these lower credibility resources sparingly. So, things that you can do today, if you've already got a draft, is audit it. So this is your action plan. Audit your current draft. You want to highlight your stories, your anecdotes, and your case studies, and ask yourself, does each one earn its space? Is it there for a reason? Is it tying back into the overall theme, method, concept I'm trying to teach in that chapter? You can also identify gaps where there is maybe too much heavy data or theory, where a story could help really illuminate what you're trying to teach to your readers. You might want to think about developing your story bank if you haven't started writing already. List some potential stories from your own experience, and then identify some stories that you need to research or develop to help prove your point. Map your stories to specific concepts in your book as well. And then for the action plan, you also want to apply the framework. Revise 3 of your stories if you have already written a draft using today's techniques. Get some feedback from some beta readers, and then iterate and improve your stories based on the responses that you get. There are some questions to ask when revising. You can pause the screen and take a look at these if you'd like to. I'm not going to read them to you, but if you do answer no to 2 or more of these questions, consider replacing or revising the story because it may not be helpful to your book overall. We'll also have a digital worksheet for you with similar information to this on our Discord server to help you as you're editing. So on our Discord server, we do have this digital worksheet to help you organize anecdotes and case stories to help your business writing. This is what it will look like. So you can keep a copy for yourself, download it, and you can even save a copy to your browser. It does have a save button to help you check the quality, look for red flags in your stories and anecdotes, and whether or not you should include it. And you can save your progress, export it as a text, or start a new story. Some key takeaways from this session. Remember, your stories, your case studies, your anecdotes are not decoration. You're using them as core teaching tools. They should return to the points you're trying to make in each chapter or in your book overall. Every story should earn its place by serving the concept of your book. Specificity and authenticity in your book are going to be polish or name dropping every time. And the best stories show the struggles. They don't just show the success. No one likes to read about a perfect hero. And your unique experiences, if you've been in the field that you're writing about, are part of your competitive advantage, and they're also going to be part of what you include in your author biography in your book. So in this webinar, we have reviewed the difference between anecdotes, stories, and case studies. We've taken a look at when and how to use the types effectively and where to use them. We took a look at some techniques for crafting compelling narratives, and we looked at some mistakes to avoid that might weaken your business writing. Thank you, as always, for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, specifically on business writing. If you have any questions or you want to discuss anything you've seen here, let's continue the conversation on our Discord server, and that's where you'll be able to find the free digital worksheet as well. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. We will be taking a break from the webinars for at least a week or 2 during the holidays, so we will see you in the new year.